right. Welcome back to Prospect Podcast. I have myself here, Coach Human. Below me to my left is Coach D. We have a great guest on today, Coach Kinzie. We're really excited to talk to him. He's a flexbone guru. And we'll let him kind of dive into a little bit of his coaching journey, and then we'll dive into things from there. Coach, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, guys.
Great. If you could just kind of dive into your coaching journey so we can really dive into everything from there and kind of talk a little bit about flexbone, but the areas that you focus on too.
Yeah. So, man, it has definitely been a journey. So I know I started my first year as an assistant coach was 2001. I was actually not in any way involved in coaching. I was in college for college for communications. My brother got a head coaching job at South Bend LaSalle High School. It was the last year that LaSalle was a high school. Half the kids left, so he had a team of like 20 kids, and he didn't have enough coaches. Asked me to come help out. Fell in love with it. Changed my major. I was even in my junior year of college. I changed my major to education, and I've been coaching and teaching ever since. Spent 16 years as an assistant coach. Never really had any aspirations to be a head coach. My brother was the head coach. I was always kind of his right-hand man. In 2014, my brother passed away, unfortunately. And then I stayed on. I spent 8 years at Mishawaka Marion High School, which is my alma mater, coaching for Reggie Glahn, who is an Indiana Hall of Famer. Before that, I coached at South Bend Adams for Elmer Britton, who's an Indiana Hall of Famer. So I've got some Hall of Fame guys on my resume. But then in 2019, I got taken on by Jarvis Edison at South Bend Riley to be his defensive coordinator. He stepped away from teaching and coaching, and I was named the interim coach in 2020. Probably 6 weeks before COVID. So my first season as a head coach. Yeah, my first season as a head coach was COVID year. So that was a hoot. So I spent 2 years as an interim coach at South Bend Riley. Then I went over the border to Michigan for 3 years, and I coached in the MHSAA at a little tiny country school called Brandywine. It's the 5 minutes north of the Indiana border. Spent 3 years there, and then I've been in Indiana my whole life. You give me a blank map, I could point to every school in the state, tell you where they are, what their colors are, what their mascots are. I know so many coaches down here, and I felt kind of like a nobody up in Michigan. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections. And then my son was going to be starting his junior year, and I was like, I just want to get back to Indiana, come back home, and coach in the IHSAA. So I came down in February. I accepted a position at Frankfort High School in Indiana. I moved here in August, and I was removed from my position in November. They hired a local guy, which I get. A new athletic director. You know how it works. Athletic directors always want to bring in their own guy, so it's part of the business.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. We know it all. We know it all too well.
Yep. So I am. So I'm currently between positions. I think I have a coaching job lined up for next year. I'll resume my head coaching duties a year from today. But my son's going to be a senior, so I can't take on a head coaching job and then not be there I got to be here for my son's senior year. So I'll probably take an assistant job for a year and just be there to be dad on Friday nights. And we'll pick up the head coaching thing in a year.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, all right. So that's an interesting journey. You've been kind of all over the state and different places. Talk about kind of the that part of the journey, like going to different places and kind of how what that process has been like for you.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is, and again, I'm going to beat my chest all day long, Indiana high school football. Listen, we might not be Texas or Florida or Ohio, but Indiana high school football is a super, super high level of football. I think the IHSAA, our state organization, does a great job enforcing rules and keeping things competitive. I know, obviously right now, hey, listen, I graduated from a Catholic high school. I spent 8 years of my life coaching at a Catholic high school. So I know that the private versus public debate is raging in a lot of states. Indiana has a success factor where if you win a certain number of championships, you get a point for a sectional, 2 points for a regional, so on and so forth. And then they promote you up a class. And it's done a really good job. I know, like even this year, I think only 2 of the 6 state championships were won by private schools. Michigan was definitely a culture shock. One of the things about Michigan is so in Indiana, we have these contact periods during the winter and the spring where you're allowed to do out of season practice legally. Michigan is
That's
very
awesome.
strict. Yeah, it's awesome. So I mean, obviously no protective equipment, but we can hand off a football, we can run drills.
Yeah.
And that's why one of the reasons I think that the level of football is so high. In Michigan, I know we were so frustrated because you're not allowed to put shoulder pads on until like the 3rd day of official August practice. So
Yeah.
some of us, you look at the schedule and I think you get to like day 8 is your full pad scrimmage. Like, okay, whoa, we've only been blocking each other with shoulder pads for 7 days. Now we're running around tackling people. But I do think one thing I loved in Michigan is just because of the fact that there was such a limited to non-existent off season. A lot of the schools up in Michigan run, I mean, really like the official state offense of Michigan is that straight T, 32 personnel, super simple, very short playbooks. And I think it's really changed how I coach just because seeing how so many coaches get creative with working with a thin playbook. It was really interesting to see. And in a lot of ways, the less is more. It's better to, what is the old Bruce Lee? I don't fear the man who knows 1,000 punches. I fear the guy that knows one punch he's practiced 1,000 times.
And you think,
but yeah.
Coach, not to interrupt you, but you think that's
Yeah.
because they don't have as much time in the off season to literally like sit there and run through football type workouts. So you feel like that's why a lot of those guys with the simple playbook kind of just go with that. That's kind of where you're thinking. Look, it's the same in Jersey. Like we have no spring ball. We just had this conversation because we were talking to a coach from Tacoma, Washington, and we don't, so we don't have spring ball here in Jersey. It's strictly, just weight room stuff. You can't use a ball until the last day of track. Once the Meet of Champions happens, which is usually around June 20th, 21st, somewhere around there. And then you could, if you wanted to, hand out full pads and go for the summer. So it's very comparable. Michigan, I guess, is comparable to that. I think it is what it is. I mean, we're all kind of adjusted to it. I mean, and I'm sure there's guys that aren't doing it the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. So that was a little bit of a culture shock. Continue, Coach. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want, just comparison. Yeah. Keep going.
No, and I think, like you said, it definitely forces you to be very creative. Obviously, in this day and age, everybody wants to go RPO and pretend that they're Lincoln Riley. It's like, listen, man, that takes a lot. Lincoln Riley gets to get on a plane and travel around the country and handpick his guys. When you're stuck with the kids that happen to live close to your building and you only get 8 days in pads before your first full contact scrimmage, you almost have to be more creative than you do with a thick, wild playbook. But it's definitely interesting to see the way that Michigan coaches had to adapt to that. And it definitely kind of changed my perspective as well. And it definitely makes me appreciate when I get to put my guys in shoulder pads in July. Makes me, thank God, thank goodness and I know I'm a defensive guy first and foremost. That's why I run the flexbone. And I just know from a defensive standpoint, man, it's so hard. Like, how do you practice getting off of blocks safely and effectively with hand shields? At some point you've got to be able to fit up on shoulder pads and, just trying to find ways creatively to get around that without breaking the rules. Cause I'm a stickler for the rules. I know that there's tons of schools in Michigan that were breaking rules. We know it, but man, I'm convinced I live in constant fear the day that I fudge a rule will be the day that I get caught. So I'm a stickler. I'm a stickler for following rules. You know what I mean? So I don't play games with that. I know other people got away with it, but yeah, it is what it is. The IHSAA is really good about that. We have our director, Robert Falcons. If somebody breaks a rule, Robert Falcons is in the athletic director's office Monday morning to meet with you. So we do a really good job in Indiana of keeping people compliant.
That's interesting. So talk a little bit about, so you're big on the flex bone. Talk about how you got that became one of the things that you find to be, a very effective offense? What are, the attributes, and do you run like the Navy flex bone, or you run out of the gun? How do you guys run it?
Yeah, so the way that I got into the flex bone, again, it's funny because my brother was an offensive guy that kind of got pressed into defensive service. I've always been a defensive guy. So my understanding of an offense really comes from a defensive coach perspective. When I was at South Bend Adams with Elmer Britton, it was really more of the double wing than a true, it looks like the flex bone, but there's not a lot of option in it. Reggie Glon at Marion ran the flex bone, but we had a running back that went to the NFL, so we really lined up in the eye an awful lot. When you got a kid, it was basically Xander Horvath, who's now in Canadian football. It was just, hey, Xander left, Xander right, go do your thing, big guy. But so he ran the flex bone. But the big one is we had a team in our conference that we played against every year as a crosstown rival, Mishawaka High School. It was coached by Bart Curtis, who is a legend. Anybody who knows anything about the flex bone, Bart Curtis is probably one of the top 5 to 10 names that pops up in Flexbone America. So Bart Curtis, it was so frustrating just having them run veer and dive and trap up your gut for 3 yards. And I mean, it would be 4th and 1. They'd go for it. They'd get it. It was so frustrating. I told myself if I ever became a head coach, that's what I'm going to run, because I know as a defensive coach what it feels like having to play against that. So when I became the head coach, my first year, 2020, we ran the veer out of the split back. We had kind of a We Are Marshall moment. We weren't allowed to work. We had no weight room. We could only work in groups of 4. We weren't allowed to touch a football because nobody knew how to sanitize footballs. The whole 2020 season was so crazy. And we literally sat around a room. It's like, all right, what is the simplest thing we can install? It was literally like the scene from We Are Marshall. And so we went with the split back veer. Our offensive coordinator at the time was my uncle. We didn't run a lot of option with it, but then 2021, I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down. I worked with Bart Curtis, reached out, and now, we were rivals. Now he and I are really close friends. He's my mentor. I talk to him all the time. Went and I started learning how to run the flex bone from him, and I haven't looked back. And I know from a schematic perspective, we run the version of the flex bone that Harding University runs. Harding is, of course, I mean, they're a D2 powerhouse. They're still beating people's brains in right now in playoffs. It's interesting to see just over the course of the last 20 to 30 years, the way that the flex bone has changed. It really is now the zone dive is really the main play in the flex bone. So it's not even an option play. You basically run zone dive, and if you get 4 yards, you run zone dive again. And then essentially, again, as a defensive coach, if you run zone dive and you get a 2-yard gain, you start asking questions. Okay, where's the bubble? Who made the tackle? Who's responsible for the pitch? And you start it's like the Raptors in Jurassic Park where you're biting the electric fence looking for the weak spots. That's really what the whole thing does. It's just a systematic approach. It makes it simple. And I tell my staff and I tell my players all the time, I don't call plays. The defense calls plays. I'm just reading what the defense has given us. But the Harding guys are fantastic. Those coaches are so awesome about responding to emails. They run a clinic every year. But yeah, anybody that's trying to get into the flex bone, I would always steer them towards the Harding guys.
Very cool. Now, are they at a gun or under center?
They're under center. I don't honestly. I don't know.
Okay, so yeah. So you're running the zone. Are they running it as a look like midline with the zone run?
So they'll do. Yeah, they'll do both. I think they're predominantly the midline is their main weapon. I know for years I was always the inside veer was kind of my base play, but Warsaw, Bart Curtis is at Warsaw High School now. He's the same way. I think that the midline has kind of become the main option play for a lot of programs, and I know Harding runs the heck out of midline. It's I think midline just allows you to get downhill a lot faster. It pairs really well with trap. There's a lot of stuff you can do with motions in the back. I think midline just tends to be a little bit more effective. And I think too, man, it's, so many sports, especially at the high school level, kids don't want to play that kind of football. So what I'm saying, like your opponents, defenses, man, they want to go out and they want to sling the ball and they want to go out in coverage. I want to force that 145-pound defensive back to line up in the box and tackle a full. So we force kids to play a version of football that they don't like playing very much, and I think that midline allows you to do that.
And Coach, in retrospect to other teams around you within Indiana, is that what are you seeing? Are you like the rarity in running this offense? What do most guys around you do? Because look, we could take Jersey and break it down state-wise, and it's, you know, and kind of say, you know, hey, North guys kind of a lot more run this, Central guys kind of do this, right? Like there's kind of pockets of certain things. So what is it like within the state itself in comparison to kind of what you guys do and then what everybody else does?
Yeah, and I think Indiana, the flexbone is really common in Indiana. I think even more so in Indiana, a lot of teams run the wing tee, so we see a ton of wing tee. Even in the job that I was just at Frankfurt, we're in a brand new conference, the Monon Athletic Conference, and there are a handful of programs that are still slinging it, but Western Boone has won a couple of state championships. They run the flex bone. Again, it's a little bit more of a wing tee. We marry a bunch of wing tee stuff in with our flex bone, but we're more flex bone than wing tee. They're more wing tee than flex bone.
Got it.
Cascade is in our conference. They just won. They had undefeated regular season last year, and then they just had a perfect 15-0 state championship season this year, running the double wing tee. So we get a lot of teams in Indiana are round and pound teams, and I think there are a lot of teams that still try to sling it. But guys, it's Indiana. Like when you get to regionals, it's not a lot of fun to be those RPO throws get real difficult when it's 35 degrees and a driving rain, and So
Dave and I have always talked about this because in Jersey, like it is like the last state championship game will actually be played tonight, right? So like and to win it, like the overall in recent years they've gone to an overall group champ. Jersey is broken down into 5 groups size wise, and then there's the privates play their own playoffs, right? So they have their own, like there's a parochial A and a parochial B. So the private schools have their own playoffs. They're not mixed in with the publics when it comes to playoff stuff. So the last game will actually be tonight. And we talk about it all the time. Like, man, when it gets playoff time and it's November and Thanksgiving and all that, and it's cold, like you got to be able to run the ball, like that's one of the biggest things, especially because weather plays such a role in it. And I think that the teams that can do that, like they're more successful just because, it's kind of what warrants it. So we have that discussion all the time.
Yeah. And I think it is, it's born out of necessity. I think that the teams in Indiana that go to the wing tee, a lot of them, and I know, Cascade, Connor Simmons is a great young coach who, played college ball. He was a quarterback, so he wants to sling it. And he even said, I think the day that they switched to the wing tee was one of those, sectional games. It was 40 degrees, pouring rain. And he's like, we ain't going to be able to do it today, boys. And so I think a lot of coaches who have, listen, I didn't pick this because it's sexy and popular. You know what I mean? I picked it because it works. I can run it. I can take a bunch of kids that are not 5-star athletes and we can run it. And I think that's the other piece of it too, is, if you want to be a true, 10 personnel, 11 personnel spread team, it's great when you got better Jimmies and Joes. If their Jimmies and Joes are better than your Jimmies and Joes, it's going to be a long night. It's real hard to make those throws downfield when your guys are just not better than their guys. Mm-hmm. But so I think that, a lot of coaches we're good at adapting. We're good at kind of making use of the talent that we have. And it sounds like Jersey is, probably every other state is in the exact same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. What about as far as the type of players that you see? Like what are what kind of players are in Indiana? Like what do you have a lot of? What do you have a little of?
Yeah, and I think in Indiana we have a lot of there's a lot of the the traditional kind of country kid, big burly strong kids.
Right.
And I do think I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute here. All of the programs that you see that are successful are full of kids that are not specialized athletes. It doesn't matter what school you're at, even if you're going up to the 5A, 6A level. you see kids that are also basketball players. You see kids that are also wrestlers. You see kids that are also, running track. My own kid is a 3-sport athlete. I just think that in
Oh,
Indiana,
awesome.
we have, I know, and I love it. And I think,
Yeah, it's like
we are,
it's
I
such
know,
a rare thing now. Like it's the 3-sport kid, like that just don't happen anymore. It's awesome.
I know. And it has been, and like, listen, I feel like basketball and baseball, yeah, listen, I get it. They have long seasons. There's travel seasons that go on after the regular season. Oh, hang on. It's our school bell.
All
Um,
good.
but so I know, like, baseball season. Yeah, I mean, the actual baseball season lasts into the summer, and then you've got travel. And I know, in Michigan, even, we had these travel leagues that we wouldn't even be able to see our kids for conditioning or anything until late July, early August.
Yep.
But I think in Indiana, that is one really cool thing, is I do think that we see tons of multi-sport athletes who are out and competing, which again, I think sometimes there's like a happy medium. I'm sure that if you were in a state like Texas, where you have year like high school football is big business, right? Those coaches are making, six
Oh, yeah.
figures coaching football. So I could see, oh, now there's an announcement. Sorry.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Yeah, good.
But I could see that maybe in states like that, they maybe encourage more specialization just in football. But here in Indiana, we don't do that. I love, us football coaches don't encourage, we push. Like, I will take a kid that doesn't play a winter sport, and I'm like, hey, buddy, here's the wrestling coach, try out wrestling. Same thing with, track in the springtime. Yeah, I think that in Indiana, we see lots and lots and lots of multi-sport athletes, successful anyways, which is really cool to see. So, yeah, we'll go from there. But it's been really cool to see in Indiana the no specializing.
No doubt about it. I think that's a cool thing. Indiana has like a definitely a big mix between rural areas and obviously some more populated areas, cityier, more like areas like Evansville or Indianapolis, which is obviously a big hub. And then
Where did you
maybe
run camps, Dave?
Indianapolis. I think we did Evansville, Indianapolis. I think those were the two in Indiana we used to do. We haven't done them in a handful of years, but when we used to run a lot of them around the country, we that was the two areas I think we did. But Indianapolis used to have a lot of really good, like that camp used to have a ton of really good players. We were like, the first time we ran them, we were really pleasantly
Shocked.
surprised at how how many really good players there were. So because at the time I didn't really know much about Indiana, but I think we did one time we did indoor facility, then we did Warren Central, we did one year, then we did somewhere else. It slips my mind, but it was one of the other powerhouses in the
Always nice to be pleasantly surprised when you're rolling into one of those those states there, and then all of a sudden you're looking going, whoa.
Back then, Warren Central was loaded. Back then, we're talking like, I don't know, 2012, 13 time period, I think. They were loaded back then, but there was quite a few teams that were real good. When I was an agent, I represented a player that played at Minnesota, who played at one of the powerhouses. I think it was part of suburban area of Indianapolis, but he played at a powerhouse. I think Cathedral's like is it Cathedral or Catholic? That's a powerhouse.
Yeah, Cathedral is, so again, success factor. So Indiana it's basically split into 5 classes, with the biggest class being split into 2. So the mega schools are in 6A, the big schools are in 5A, so on and so forth. Cathedral by size is a 4A school, and I think they're still playing in 6A just because of success factor. So Cathedral is, they're the big
we're talking
powerhouse.
And you're talking how many kids in the high school when it comes to that 6A or 5A, whatever. The largest classification would be how many kids in a high school?
Yeah, so Indiana, the biggest one would be 6A, and you're talking, some schools have 2,400, some schools like Warren Central, Carmel, Ben Davis, Penn, you're talking 4,000, 5,000 student high schools, massive schools.
Damn.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's why they had to split, because the small, when it was just 5 classes, the small side of 5A was like 1,500, and then they're playing against
Right, and
Carmel,
then the
who's got
others, because there was
5,000.
such a right,
Yeah,
there's such a variety within a class itself. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and then now
yeah.
when it comes to playoffs, private schools and public schools are all together mixed as one.
Yep, all
Just
in the
like
same class.
Florida.
Yep,
Yeah. So they do it like
yep.
Florida. Yeah. Yeah. Same type of gig. See, Jersey, that's the one thing they, there's two groups of private schools, and your national powerhouses, your Bergen Catholics, Don Bosco's, so they're all kind of in this parochial A, and they also play in the same division conference type things. So they literally beat the hell out of each other all year regular season, and then playoff time literally have to go and beat each other again to win a state title. So that's a little different when it comes to that. And Dave can attest to this, like if they were in with the publics, I don't know if a public would ever win a state title in that classification.
No,
It's not even, you know what I mean? It's Jersey's very small, a lot of schools in like every town has a high school until you get to South Jersey, where it's more regionalized. Now you have multiple towns making up high schools, and we've seen in recent years the South start to win more championships because they just have access to more kids, more talent, and the parochials or the private schools in the South aren't as prevalent as they are in North Jersey. I mean, you're talking the top 5 private schools in the state are all within 30 miles of each other. I mean, they literally just pick off the same kids. And down south, that's not the thing. It's more Philadelphia almost is kind of, you start to creep into Pennsylvania. So it's broken down a little different here in Jersey. But I just think separating it makes it, it is what it is. Cause I again, here that it would just not be, it wouldn't be even conducive. Like it would literally be, hey, we're just going to play to get to the semifinals, and that's our championship, because there's no way we're going to beat these teams that can pull, from within 60 miles of their school. You go 60 miles in Jersey, you're halfway down the state, it's a little different when it comes to that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I know Indiana's a little bit more spread out. And
Right.
I think too, one thing that we definitely see here in Indiana, and again, the Success Factor's done a great job. So if you have a 3A Catholic
I think that's
school
interesting.
who wins, 2 regional championships, they're playing up at 4A, and it does seem to settle that out. But I do think, in Indiana, for the most part, most of the school districts, if not all, I'm not going to speak to all districts, but most of the districts have like an open enrollment. Obviously, the IHSAA, the Athletic Association, has its own rule about, transferring and eligibility and whatnot. But I think what we see in Indiana is some of the public schools actually, because it's really, the public versus private debate is really all about access to resources. There are some public schools in Indiana who have an unbelievable access to resources. And I know, back when I started coaching, early 2000s, you would always get, those kids that were at a big school. A lot of those kids would go to a smaller school because they'd rather be a big fish in a little pond, right? If I'm going to be a sophomore at Penn, I might only, play JV for the next 2 years. But if I go to Marion, I could be a varsity starter for 3 years. I think the opposite is now true. You see kids who would rather go and be backup at a Penn or a Center Grove because they have so many resources.
Wow.
So I think that in Indiana, it's a weird mix, because obviously we have the private schools, but there's a lot of like mega public schools too. So
that's interesting. Talk about, like, from a coaching standpoint, like your philosophy in building a program. Like, what are some of the core things and values that you try to instill in your players?
yeah, I mean, everywhere I go, I always have the basic core tenet. I use the hashtag fight with a 1 instead of an I, and it's always about family, be 1-0 every day, have a growth mindset, hustle, and then toughness. And it's just, we preach those over and over again. Although I'm a big believer, I know I've read a bunch of stuff on, Nick Saban. I'm big on his philosophy about being a transformational coach. I know he is big about, when he was at Michigan State, he was a transactional coach. And then he made the shift over to be a transformational coach. And I know, like, when I came to the program I'm at now, or was at previously, we were when I took over, we were on a 19 game losing streak. We've been, I think it's 4-35 in the previous 4 years. So I came in and it's like, all right, listen, like before I can come in here and start making demands about here's the standards, here's the expectations, like I got to show these kids that I love them. I mean, you have to make sure that these guys know whether we win or whether we lose, I have your back. I'm not going to, drop you as soon as you lose me a football game or miss me a tackle. And I think that, if you are in a place that is perennially good, that old school style works a little bit better. But when you're coming into, I'm a program builder. I don't apply for jobs where schools are 9-1. You know what I mean? I like going to the 1-9
Sound familiar,
schools.
Dave? Dave sounds familiar, buddy.
I like to torture
I
yourself.
love turning.
Listen, Coach Schumann is the ultimate takeover. Like they asked, like,
Where would be
hey,
glutton for punishment?
can you please come take? Can you please, can you please take this? You know what I mean? Like, he applies for those jobs where, look, I've seen Coach Shu take over a program, back it down from varsity to only play a JV schedule to build it back up just to get numbers and, do these. I mean, he literally is the definition of a program builder. Everywhere he's gone, he's left it better than he has. He's been out of it for 5 years because now he's really doing God's work, coaching 11-year-olds and his son youth football. God bless him. I mean, it's why his hair looks like that some days. Like, it's like, I feel bad for him. Listen, he's coach. He's also a UConn alum, so he's living it every day. You know what I'm saying?
It's been a tough couple of years. Yeah,
he's just, but that program builder, I think, is such a staple for who somebody is, in terms of that. Look, every one of us could be successful when we take over programs, or if we took over a program that has the Jimmies and Joes, has every resource they're willing to throw at you, has won consistently over and over. That's more of a just don't screw it up type of situation. Like, when you go into some programs that are, haven't won a game, or, they're literally clawing to just be a program in general. I mean, you're literally building it from the ground up, and it doesn't go anywhere unless those players have that understanding of coach cares about me more than just how many touchdowns I can throw or how many tackles it is, any of that type of stuff. It's personally, when I philosophy wise coaching, I need to know those guys. They need to know me on off the field. It's so much more off the field understanding with that level of comfort and then you can get into all the other stuff, because if these kids, and it's, look, kids see right through the bullshit. They understand it, who's
Absolutely.
there for what it is. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces to it. Once they see that you care on a different level about who they are, what's going on in their life for real, now you're really going to cook with gas. But until that, dude, these guys, that barrier is up, and there ain't no breaking down those walls. I don't care how many games you've won or where you come from. It ain't going to work. That's just not how it is.
Yeah. And I think, my coaching philosophy, big bold letters right at the top of the philosophy, it says you can't have culture in an empty locker room. That's what it all comes down to. Now, I do think, I do think that, you have to know some football. You know what I mean? It isn't going to be 20 years from now, they're going to be sitting around having a nice cold beverage with their buddies, be like, boy, coach didn't have a clue what he was doing, but he sure did love us. There's got to be, it matters if you win or lose. It does. It matters if you win or lose. And I know as a coach, if we go 0-10, nobody wants to play for me. That means I have fewer kids in my locker room. That's fewer lives that I'm impacting. If you win games, people come out. Now that's more lives. That's more people in my locker room. That's more lives that I can impact. That's more family trees that I can impact. And that's really what it's all about. But I do think, and I know, again, to quote Mike Leach, everybody's got their fat little girlfriends, and you've got to be more appealing than their fat little girlfriends, right? I love Mike Leach's rants, are some of the best rants out there.
Best. But
it is these kids who are here playing football, they are doing the most difficult sport. I mean, for people that don't coach, and I know obviously this is probably a podcast not watched by a lot of non-football people, but you guys don't understand the amount of people that, when we're doing laundry at the end of the day, the amount of kids that spoil themselves during games, the amount of blood that's on these jerseys. This is a brutal, brutal game. And it's the hardest thing that you can do in school. It is, it's asking the most selfish demographic, teenage boys, to be selfless. You're asking a bunch of guys to block for their brothers and tackle for their brothers. And it's not mandatory. It's not a graduation requirement. They're choosing to be here instead of at home playing Fortnite, at home texting their girlfriends, So I think that there has to be an element of, yes, we want to win, but in Indiana, there's 314 high schools, and 6 of them are going to win their last game. The other 308 teams, are they a failure because they didn't win a state championship? It's got to be more than the winning and the losing. Obviously, winning matters, but if you're doing it because you're transactional, I think you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And like you mentioned, I think that some of the best coaching jobs in America are those guys that took a team that had no business being 2-8 and they went 2-8. I mean, there's coaches that did a terrible job and won 7 games, and there's coaches that coached their ass off to win 2.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that outside the coaching industry, I think we all recognize that. I know I have a good friend of mine, up in South Bend Clay. They closed that high school a couple years ago, and I had a good friend, Darius Mitchell, who was the head coach there. Man, I don't know that they had more than 20 kids ever, but they never had to drop to JV only. They always fielded a team. They didn't have to forfeit games. And it's like the fact that you have these kids out there, going 0-10, but they're still here playing for you. Like, I'm sorry, I could go to Glacier and hear these guys that are state champions talk. I want to sit and have a conversation with this guy. How did you keep these kids motivated? How did you keep these guys coming out? That's somebody, he coached his butt off just to be there. And again, to the outsider, they're like, man, South Bend Clay sure was terrible. Like, hold on though. Like, the things that he was doing there are things that should be like taught. People should hear his name. People should know the things he did to even keep that team on the field. It really, that's why I love taking over those the fixer uppers, so to speak. It makes me feel good. I like knowing that I'm making an impact beyond just winning and losing. Now, obviously, that means my career win-loss record is never going to be super impressive, but that's okay. I'm trying to see how many people I can have at my funeral. That's kind of that's the stat I'm really interested in.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, for me, I was able to have some good satisfaction in the sense that it went from completely horrible to state championship game for, a program and perennial winning. And then, in other places it was, just like getting them from being completely awful to winning some games.
Yeah.
And so,
or just being organized, just looking like, like others look, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, for you, Dave, too, it was a combination of now multiple, different, like, towns coming together to be a team, you know what I mean? Like, they were joining towns and schools to play for one school just for numbers, and it was a lot of back and forth type of stuff that like, but at the end of it, like, I mean, look, like, they just asked that last year, that team that Dave literally built from the ground up, like, went into the school's Hall of Fame, and they had a dinner and a whole banquet for it. And it was, it was awesome to see the fruits of your labor so far down the road, you know what I'm saying? Like, come to fruition. Like, that's, I think, why we ultimately do this. And how many of his players went back and, like, just thanked him, and, things that, like, they told him stories about things that he did. And they like, you don't think those things have an impact at the time, but in reality, like, it stayed with these kids and shaped who they are, 5-10 years down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big thing. And, the more success you end up having, I think it does translate to those players having more success in life. But there are, when you have, but when they have that journey, that success, I think, means a lot versus that. Listen, as I've been an assistant, and actually one of the places the last place that took over, like, they already had a decent program and we won right away. And it felt good. Like, they were great kids, but, I don't know that they have the same takeaway as those kids that built up the program from scratch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like those kids have a different type of takeaway because they could have easily have not bought in and just stayed status quo, and no one would have said anything to them that if they were, you know what I mean? So that, I think that takes a different kind of thought process. And what I found is that those kids in life have become really, really tenacious in their journeys in life, which a lot of their friends that were not part of the team, or went to school with, have not. But I will say this is the other interesting part. What I noticed was when it turned significantly, the thing I noticed was the school changed. The school changed significantly in how they looked at themselves. I'm talking about kids within the school and the teachers,
Mhm.
and administrators are what they are. Some are on board, some aren't. But as far as and even administrators, I have to say, like, they were smart enough to jump on the bandwagon at least for a while. So, but I noticed it with the kids, like in the school, like those kids became people that other people wanted to emulate. And like before the state championship game, like they actually had like a rally for those kids, and everybody was like super excited,
Juiced up.
Yeah, it was crazy. And when kids would commit to colleges, like when we had a couple kids go to Division I, they actually had the whole school in there when they made their announcement, which I was shocked.
Wait, you mean when signing day was something? It wasn't
when
just,
they made their announcement. So now signing day was different. You know what I mean? That was just them and their parents. But like a couple
That's
of guys
awesome.
made announcements. Yeah, I'd never been anywhere I don't think anywhere where they did that. Usually it's a small group, even at the big schools. I don't think they ever like have the whole school. So now the funny part was one of the kids ended up changing his commitment, which was down the line, which was funny. But when they, like, literally the whole school was there when he made his announcement, they like roared, and they had like it was crazy. They had the band playing music and stuff because they hadn't had any level of success. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal that a kid was going Division I, a couple kids. So so those things were pretty cool. Like, I think those kids have gone, and then one kid ended up deciding to go to West Point after he was originally committed somewhere else, decided to go to West Point, and like he's wildly successful. It's carried into all of his siblings, and it's kind of amazing. Like that movie Rudy, which a lot of people laugh at. Now, this kid was obviously a really good player, but the thing from Rudy that I always drew away from was not that he even got on the field, not that everyone got excited about that, was that what happened to his siblings after the fact that Rudy went to Notre Dame. Every one of them went to college, okay? None had gone before. Every single one went after. So I do think that that's where football still to this day, even in the crazy era that we're in, that part can have an impact at the high school level, which is unique. And maybe even in college at certain places that can happen. I think in college, it's a lot harder at any level because of transfer portal to really have that same impact. There are guys that have tried to fight that, like Dabo Sweeney, and it's just not sustainable, in the new world. But in high school, you could still do that. So that's the beauty of it. In high school, you could still do that. And that to me was always good. And, coaching young kids, I'll tell you this, the one thing I've seen, if you're the kids that are able to stay with you, you actually potentially could have them a lot longer. And I never understood it as a high school coach. But now that I coach my son's kids, if the majority of my team stays together, they could play together for 6-7 years, you know what I mean, before they choose to.
6, 7. Sorry. Yeah. But
listen, we're living it.
6, 7. Yeah.
My 2-year-old daughter, right? Thanksgiving sits at the big kid table, and all of a sudden we got TikTok videos of my daughter 6, 7. I'm like 2 years old. What are we doing, guys? Like, come on, I can't.
But
Anyway.
But I do think, like you're saying, listen, again, I'm a football coach, so I'm biased, but I think you're right. Your football program is the front porch of your entire school community. If you're
Absolutely.
a competitive football program, and I think it sets it sets the
Tone.
thermostat it sets the tone for the entire
School
school
year.
year. Yeah.
Absolutely. The best school years I've been a part of were years where our football team was, semifinals, semi-state finals, or state final, right? Like or even a good like football year, I'm just
Yeah.
like a winning record, especially at a place that hasn't had that. And I think administrators, unless you've been a part of it, or you know what I mean, say you're coming from a program that wins football a lot, and then they come to a new place, and a lot of people don't understand how much that really does set the tone. And it doesn't matter if it's sports or not, just the school year in the building, the temperature, the tone, everything kind of rolls off of that in terms of we've had even administrators run the numbers when it came to like behavior issues and stuff like that. And a good football year, that stuff was low. A bad football year, that stuff was on the rise. It's just how it goes. Like, it's usually the biggest sport within a school, irregardless of how big the school is, right? So you have the most impact on the kids. Every teacher within a building knows who's a football player and who's not, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like, that's just how it rolls. People who embrace that and understand that have a good school year. And that's where they push to, hey, that's why the football coach he should, right? And you call me old school or whatever, have a little bit more pull than everybody else within a building. And that's just kind of how it goes. Once they see that as another coach or a teacher, like, hey, if we help out the football coach, like, my job gets easier because I'm not dealing with all this other stuff because it's good. And I just think the impact it can have on the school itself throughout, it's not just the football team, right? Like, you got the cheerleaders, the band, all of those things, and everything like within a school can be utilized by the football team, right? Like, we've used our media department to run our social media or do our film work, right? Like, those guys, we've used our art programs to design certain things of, whether it be a new uniform or a logo or t-shirts that we're coming out with, right? Like, you want to incorporate all of those things within your building to benefit your program. And now it's more based like, hey, we're running this like a college, you know what I'm saying? Like, even when it's, like a weight room and all that, all of those things, man, just buy into why high school football is still so impactful when it comes to it. And a lot of the thing too is, football, I heard it yesterday, like the ball goes flat for everybody at some point, right? And for majority of these guys, 97% of high school football players never play after their last high school football game. And that's what separates it from others. You can't go play in a men's basketball league or some pickup intramural, whatever it is. Like, that helmet and shoulder pad comes off and now you're done, right? So that impact that it has, it's why guys are still, gathered around the fence on Friday nights with their varsity jackets from 1980, whatever, or you know what I mean? Like, you just have that impact on it. And we've seen too, a lot of guys recently, like highest level, like I've played in Super Bowls. I think Greg Olson was the most recent one. He's like, I've played in Super Bowls. I've played at Miami in big bowl games. He goes, there's nothing like Friday Night Lights with your buddies. Like, that's just what it is. It's the game it is. It's the game that it is.
Yeah, I saw Kirk Cousins again. My ex-wife was from Holland, Michigan, so everybody in Holland, Michigan loves Kirk Cousins. How can you not love Kirk Cousins? But same thing. He was doing an interview and he was like, to this day, like, I've played at every level. He's like, the most fun I've ever had is playing at Holland Christian and playing against Zeeland and playing against all those rival schools. Like, yeah, no, it's once you get beyond, like, college football is fantastic, but it's a job. You're punching a clock. It's not high school football. You're in a locker room with your boys. You got your community's, name on your chest. And you're representing your town. It's really, it's special. It's a special thing. And for a lot of these guys, it's one of the first, it's their first love, and it's the first thing that they're going to get taken away from them, because when they turn 18 and that clock hits zero for the last time, like you said, it's gone. They never get the opportunity to do it again. So it's really, really special. And I think it says a lot, like you said, about, the kids that do it. And I know, like, a team this year, again, as bad as our football team was, we knew we were going to have a tough year. I only had 3 seniors that had any significant varsity experience. There's a couple other seniors that quit because I think everybody knew it was going to be a really rough year. But
Right.
like those 3 men that stayed on that team, they knew that they were planting trees that they're never going to see the shade of. You know what I mean? It's like, what is that going to turn them into when they become husbands and fathers and, business leaders and community leaders? Like, you want to talk about a servant leadership, that's servant leadership, those guys. And I'm
Oh
excited
yeah.
tonight I get to go to try to nominate these 3 to be on our all area, our local paper still does an all area team. And, those guys are going to that's going to make them great husbands, great fathers, because they know what it's like to sacrifice. And, that's part of being a man. And I think that's, to call it toxic masculinity, if you will. But I think that football is so important because I think that we have forgotten what men are supposed to be. We forgot that. It's all me, 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 me. And I think football teaches you to, we always say family, family's our first, the first of our core tenets. And, from PJ Fleck, I know it's forget about me, I love you, right? That's, I'm going to sacrifice for my brothers, for my family. And football, nothing can teach it like football, man. Nothing can teach it.
There's no doubt about it. I think that football has a unique ability to do that. What are you looking for yourself for the future? Like once your son graduates, what are you hoping to continue to accomplish and grow in your coaching career?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is just always, always learning, always growing. I know Lou Holtz, I'm from South Bend. You mentioned Rudy,
Yep.
so that's, hey, all right, that, go Irish. But he always had a quote, everything in this life, whether it's a person or a tree, you're either growing or you're dying. If, the minute that I start thinking, I know it all and I'm done learning, I that's time for me to hang up the whistle. As long as I can continue to be the best version of myself. And a lot of that, obviously, yeah, X's and O's are a part of that. But especially just, as I get older, I hate to, the beard's getting a little grayer. I got to make a little bit more of an effort to continue to connect with, the average 16 to 17-year-old male. And just, I know, like I said, I don't know that I would ever apply for a job at a, rich upper class community with $400,000 houses. Like, I love to go to communities that need a male role model. And I just, I want to, right now I'm just focused on being dad for a year. It's going to be my first year off in 20 some seasons. But yeah, I'm just going to try to find some place that I can go make an impact and make a difference. And like I always say, it's about changing family trees, and that's where I'll be in a year.
No doubt. I think that's that was one of the best things I ever did. So I can I can definitely say it's like, because it only comes around once, right? So you get very caught up in helping everybody else, and sometimes you if you don't pay attention, you can miss the most important part, which is your family. And that's always hard for coaches, because the game is so exciting. It's very exciting, and that's the draw. Like, you're changing people's lives, you're having an impact. And sometimes your family's like, well, what about me? Like, what about me? And I think in life, one of the things I think in life is, if you can do this, not everybody can, right? But if you have the ability to, at some point, make sure you address both areas, that's you'll be pretty happy about if you like go all in on one or the other. Like, if you don't fulfill some of your career objectives,
Responsibilities.
you feel
Yeah.
empty, you feel empty. And if you don't fulfill some of your family, but if you're able to accomplish both, and figure out a ways to do that, and even if you lean one way or the other, at some point, I think you get both bases covered. And I think it's what you preach to your kids as a coach, right? You know what I mean? Family. And then we sometimes forget to take care of our own family, right? And so you don't want your players to see, you want your players to see that you care about your family too. And I think in college, that's one of the things that the coaches start to come to that realization when they get later on in their career, and they start to do that. But it's sometimes something they miss, and it's like one of the hypocritical things. Like, you're spending all this time talking about how we're a family, and then you don't spend any time with your own family. What are you got to think about, what are you teaching them? Because they're they're gonna do the same exact thing. You know what I mean? They'll be like, well, who was my coach for so many years? Wow, like he didn't pay attention to his family and pay attention to outside people. So I think if you could do both, it's a really good thing. Coach, any final thoughts that you want to leave with us going forward before we let you go?
Dave, I did have one. I wanted to sneak in real quick, Coach, if you're good.
Okay.
I just was curious, like within the state of Indiana, now that you've seen the University of Indiana on such a rise over the last 2 years, how have you seen that impact the state itself in regards to the high school football scene? I mean, because that was always a basketball school, and Bobby Knight, and look, people can say what they want, but Bobby Knight is in my top 5 of all time coaches. Like I'm all good with it. Like if I saw a guy throw a chair, I'd freaking be like I'd be dunking at 5'8" white guy that could never touch rim. But but look, it was always a basketball school. Now you have, coach comes in, he really flips the program in like a year, 2 years. It's now like a big, I mean, they're going to be in the college football playoff. I mean, they're in the conference championship, like the whole works. Like, how have you seen that impact Indiana, if at all, high school football?
So I haven't seen the numbers, but I feel like just, anecdotally, I feel like there's a lot more guys, high school seniors that are signing D1 signing to go to a D1 school than usual. And I'm hoping that it does. I mean, we've always had such good talent in state, but our guys would always go to Michigan schools or Cincinnati. I feel like our guys didn't stay in state. So I'm hoping that definitely makes a big change. But I feel like just anecdotally, I feel like there's got to be more D1 signings from this class of 26 than there have been in probably the last couple of years. So hopefully that's the start of a change. Because like I said, man, like low key, I know that when you talk high school football, Indiana is not a state that comes up very often. But man, I'm telling you,
yeah, it's not.
We play some good football.
Because we have that, we have that debate all the time, right? Because look, Jersey's always somewhere, you know what I mean? Like, because the bigs are so nationally kind of known and they put players out and whatever. But when it comes to the state itself, like when you're talking next level football, there's a lot. I mean, Indiana has Division I programs, right? Whether it be private schools or not, you know what I'm saying? Like there are places Division I to go within Indiana. When you're talking Jersey, like you have Rutgers University, that's the only power or big time, when you're looking at it, right? Monmouth University is here, an FCS program, but then we're kind of scattered with Division IIIs, right? Which is different. Like that's just a different world, So Jersey, when it comes to that's something I always look at, right? Because like, look, you look at Texas, how many Division I programs? Look at Ohio, how many Division I programs? Florida, California, like your big states have bigger colleges within the state itself. Indiana has a few of those that are prominently known, you know what I mean? Like, so now that Indiana has kind of almost like caught up, if not passed some of those programs by, you know what I mean? Like, I think it can only benefit, the state itself, like not even just the kids in there, just bringing kids from out of state in, right? Because we've seen with the transfer portal, like that's why coach was able to flip Indiana as fast as he did. He took, right, Dave, how many guys from JMU when he went, he just took those guys with him and said, hey, now we're going to Indiana. Look, we see a kid that grew up in Jersey, relocated to Georgia, and his dad was a really, really high level high school coach, moved him to Georgia to get better looks. And that kid's at Indiana, so it's interesting to see kind of how that ties in with high school football in terms of how good your Power 4 program within state really is. I would love to see some numbers on that in terms of the level of talent and whatnot. But it's definitely a positive thing for Indiana. I'll tell you that much. It can't do it. It can't be bad,
Oh, absolutely not. And I think too, obviously, we've got the four FBS schools: Notre Dame, Purdue, IU, and Ball State. But then we've got a couple of FCS schools, and I know in our area, we are kind of like the Midwest is the powerhouse of NAIA D3. We've got Ferris State, Grand Valley State, St. Francis and Marion in the NAIA, even up in Michigan, Hope and Alma. I mean, we've got some really good lower level football being played in the area, but it is nice to so many kids have D1-itis, they'll get those D3 offers, but they're waiting because they're sure that, but man, if you guys went to a friggin', Hope versus, or a Grand Valley State game, like guys, everybody on that sideline was the best player on their high school team. Like I don't think Notre Dame's calling, buddy. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But it is nice to have a little bit of Division I success here outside of Notre Dame, obviously, because Notre Dame's an in-state school, but we you know what I mean. Like, we recruit nationally, so it's not really an in-state
Right.
school per se.
Yeah, you look at Notre Dame's roster. There ain't many on there, if any, from Indiana itself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a
Like,
couple
that's
of
just
couple of
little
token
different.
Indiana boys, but that's about it. Yeah.
Interesting.
That makes a ton of sense. No doubt. I mean, it's amazing what's going on with Indiana. That's amazing in the state of Indiana. You're right. Notre Dame and Indiana and how good they are. And
Purdue. Everybody forgets about Purdue, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
they're struggling a little bit this year.
Yeah.
But
they've been all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
There's a lot of football played in Indiana. It's the Midwest, man, because everyone thinks that Indiana's a basketball state, right? So,
Coach, you're good. You're good.
I was gonna say, I'm at my hard wall, so I got class. So
you're
I
all
apologize.
good, Coach. No, listen, we appreciate you taking the time, man. Thank you so much. Really, it's been awesome talking Indiana football.
Heck yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Anytime you need me, I'm always happy to talk Indiana football, guys.
All right, have a great day.
Yeah, thanks so
much.
Yep.
All right, cool.
Comparable, right? To Jersey, I guess. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe, yeah.
Similar in that, like, there's 6 levels. You know what I mean? Like, I always think that's an interesting conversation when it comes to playoffs, when with privates and publics playing together. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, they do it down in Florida, but we know, like, Florida private isn't exactly the same as, it's just, like, some of those public schools can compete. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't really. I don't know. It's just always a hell of a conversation. But, like, if you did that in Jersey and put those guys in a group size, like, there ain't nobody beating them.
Yeah, I there's some really, really good schools. So it says in 2024, at least 46 players. That's Indiana, the state. Indiana high school. I'm looking for a high school. D1, how many D1 kids? Indiana is expected to have 80. No, that's not right. Try to see how many scholarships there is. List of scholarships for football by state. All right, let me see.
Michigan, it seems like, is comparable rule wise to what we are.
Are they
in terms of, like, access to players? I thought it was very interesting when I think that would be amazing, or maybe like a start to it. If in Jersey, hey, you have a week in March where you can do football, week in May you can do football. You know what I'm saying? Like, just maybe a pocket to start it, and then ultimately try to get to a spring ball. I thought that was cool, that they kind of allow that a little bit. Now, look, again, I'm sure some guys are doing this. You know what I mean? Like, some of those morning workouts, I'm sure guys are in gyms throwing bubbles and doing whatever, dude. Like, it ain't what you're supposed to do, But I think that would be, like, maybe a start to it. That would be pretty freaking cool.
Right.
Let's see how it goes. Dude, I think I'm gonna die on that hill.
What's that?
I'll never see spring football in Jersey, or some form of it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's ever going to happen in the way that you think it might, or you would hope it might, I should say.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of just how it is.
Yeah, man.
I have to say, I have ChatGPT helping me organize all my plays into a concerted system. So it's like kind of less. I mean, it's in a place, but, like, just kind of putting it all in its place. You know what I mean?
You mean like in terms of like organizing it, like based on like down and distance, based on like that stuff? You're kind of doing it like almost like a call sheet. It's helping you put together like, hey, here's all of your plays. Here would be a call sheet, like something like that.
And responsibilities too.
Responsibilities in terms of
blocking,
what do you mean?
Blocking, base stuff. You know, I mean, I could get really granular if I want to, but like base.
Wait,
stuff.
what do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay.
Like, what do you mean by like
power?
Yeah,
like so power.
Oh,
like if
okay.
I'm running
Oh, okay.
power,
like this play is gonna, and then it'll break it down.
Yeah. So these guys have this responsibilities. Yep.
Oh, I got you.
Yep. So you could go as granular as you want. You know, you have to. You're doing it, but like you're letting it organize it for you instead of you going on the spreadsheet and then doing it all one by one. You're giving it the inputs and then
it's doing it for you,
organizing it for you, and then you're going to tweak some things. You know what I'm saying? That when you get it, but
how
instead
accurate?
of incredibly accurate, like I would go so far as to say like 95% accurate. Now I got to give it input. So like if I have to give it call play names, right? You know what I mean? So let's say power, for example. Let's say you're running power. If I want it to put a name to it, I have to put the name. It's not, it could get, by the way, if you wanted recommended names, you can get it. But I like to try to think about it the way that I might think about it. So because if I'm calling it, it's just easier for me versus
look, it's the same reason when we're coming up with signals that we try to let the kids come up with the signals,
Exactly. And then but it gives you all the base stuff. It's I think I could teach a class on this for coaches and like literally do a seminar on it and like walk guys through it. I think it would
I'd be interested to see how many guys would want to be a part of it or want to utilize it. I think there's still a level of fear.
I would do it for free initially. You know what I mean? I wouldn't do it like,
of course.
Yeah. I mean, I would do it. And then like,
until it started to run, until guys really started to jump on it.
If you needed me to help you, then you'd have to pay. Like if you want, like, hey Dave, can you go through this with me? I mean,
you'd be like, all right, dude. Like exactly. Like, what do you want me to do?
I'd love to help you. But there's only so much time in the day. You know what I mean? So, but
Nymphius,
that's going to be a thing.
It's funny when we're talking about coaches, right? Because I talked to Farshid yesterday. He's trying to get a week 0 game, and Nymphius wants a week 0 game, and he he reached out to Farshid at Garfield and was, hey, you interested? And he was like, yeah, let me just look at some things. And now Nymphius won't leave him alone. He's like, hey, how's that? How about that game? How about this game? I'm like, yeah, buddy, he wants to get a win opening week 0 against you. He's like, oh, come on, man. Like, I'm like, he also wants to lock it in. Like, he's like, look, I'd play him, but he runs 5,000 formations. You know what I mean? And he like, how am I gonna? He said, I don't want to put
right off the field.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I was like, he's like, I don't want to put my guys in that situation like week 0. I'm like, hey man, if there's ever, I said that you got all the time in the world to practice all summer against every formation that he comes up with. I said, but understand something, like that first game, like he's gonna have another 25 formations that are gonna go that you didn't even see. So get ready, So funny.
Oh yeah, well, it's actually, the thing is his base stuff is very simple for him to call. So
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like he for his players, they're able to really understand things because it's not that much for them.
Right.
But for you
God,
if you don't understand that everything is grouped,
then
you're done. You're gonna have a
struggle.
problem.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Joe Klaus, who's from Old Japan, who coached with Nymphius, does not have an issue with it.
Right.
So
because he understands it.
Yeah. Now Nymphius still can obviously put in all kinds of wrinkles, all those kinds, but
which he does and will.
He just understands that you don't need to get caught in the weeds because he knows that, like, once he knows how the foundations of what DJ does, right? So
absolutely.
So, but it's hard for other people because it does look like, it was like when the Monmouth guy came up to me, he goes, I don't know when we played them that first year at Red Bank.
Yeah.
He's like, you got so many different things here. I don't know how you do that. And I was like,
You're like, buddy, it ain't that much.
I mean, I think in their game, I think I ran.
Dude, we had Mackay on one leg scoring on bubbles.
I think I read GT counter and bubble at most of the game.
Right.
But you know what it is when you give a lot of looks. If you, I think one of the hard things for high school coaches.
That's how you can win.
You don't have a lot of assistants that can break down things the way you need them to. So it falls a lot on the head coach today, and his coordinators. And so what happens is, because you're limited in time, like, it's complicated and you don't tag everything properly, it definitely will feel like it's complicated. So you're going to have
that's why you coming up with the AI stuff, right, makes it that much, you know what I mean? Because now you don't need that time. Something else can do it for you.
Yeah, I think the thing is, as long as you know what you want to do, and you're like, you could use AI to your advantage. If you are trying to figure out what you want to do, okay, you could use it to ask questions, but the AI will take you down a journey. So if you just keep asking,
but you still have to tell it where you want to go.
Right, because it'll take you down a rabbit hole, and the next thing you know, you'll start out with a mesh offense, and you're
now you're going, oh shit,
because if you don't know what you want to get, if you don't have a good idea of what you're looking to get from it, it's like, listen, most people probably use it for like, hey, how do I make lasagna? You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what they use it for, dude.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Or just fact checking. You know what I mean? Like, oh, hey, what schools has Lane Kiffin been at before? You know what I mean? Like, that's what they're using it for.
Absolutely.
Whereas, like, my DB coach or swim coach is like, hey, I have 3 weeks before Christmas break. I need to teach this, and this. How can I marry it all together? Bam, here's your lesson plans. Like, nice job, bro. You know what I'm saying? Or, hey, we don't have a swim meet until the end of January, but we're starting practice here. I want my such and such, person to get as close to this time in the butterfly as possible. Give me the workouts he needs to do until then. You know what I mean? Like, those are specific type of parameters. Once you plug it in, it can spit it back to you.
Yeah, if you this is how it like
and that's why I love like that he's good at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that shit's awesome. Like, okay, let's do this, dude.
Yeah, you want to be like, AI,
because I'm all for it,
is your best analytical coach you could ever get. Okay.
Of course.
Now, you can't get a better analytical coach than that. What AI cannot do is tell you what you want to run. It could give you suggestions for situations, but if you don't know how you want to do things,
correct,
you're gonna get caught in a trap. And the trap is that you're just gonna follow, like, which NFL coaches get caught in it. They call a play out, they run the ball on 4th down when they're on the 10-yard line, when they clearly should kick a field goal. You know what I'm saying? Like, clearly should kick a field goal on some of these things. But like, it's you know what? Yeah. If we go offline, I'm gonna show you. I'll show you real quick. I'll show you in 2 minutes.
You showed me the one thing, and already I was like, oh, like, look at that, organizing all that stuff. Like, okay, that cleans it up for you. But again, it's like
having your own secretary, football secretary. I don't know any other way to explain it. You know what I'm saying? But let's go off. I'll show it to you real quick if you got a minute.
We have Friday. We're back Friday. We're back Friday morning with the head coach from Wilmington College, Kevin Burke.
Perfect. Oh, what's going on here?
Uh-oh.
I don't know what Coach Chad's talking about. Okay. Yep. So I'll have you. We'll jump on real quick. I'll show you.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll stay on.
Yeah.